All right, so today we're going to dive into something pretty awesome. Building a home recording studio.
Cool.
We found this really in-depth article. It's from Audient. And they really walk you through the whole process of, like, how to build one of these things from scratch.
Yeah, and the best part is it's written by someone who actually, like, went through it.
Yeah.
And did it themselves. So it's full of all these practical tips.
Exactly. And they start off by asking, like, a really important question. What will I use my studio for? I mean, it seems obvious. But I bet a lot of people don't think about that when they first start out.
Right. Like, it's easy to just jump in and be like, I want to record. But you really got to think about what you're recording and, like, what you need to do that.
Yeah.
Because that's going to drive all your decisions. Like,
Right.
Do you need a space for a full band? Or are you like a solo artist who just needs a vocal booth?
Right. Like, are you going to be recording drums? Or are you doing, like, electronic music?
Exactly. So that's going to determine, like, how big the space is, what kind of soundproofing you need, and even, like, the gear. You know what I mean?
Yeah, the gear that you buy. And they actually compare different studio sizes and layouts in here. They talked about, like, these massive studios like AR and real world.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Talk about, like, studio goals.
Yeah.
But that's a bit overwhelming.
Yeah.
For someone just starting out.
For sure. For sure. That's why they really emphasize, like, starting small and growing organically. Like, you don't have to do everything at once. Think about what you need right now and build a space that you can, like, adapt and expand on later. You can always, like, upgrade your gear or even add on to your space as you go.
Okay, so you're not stuck with this huge, expensive studio that you don't even know how to use yet.
Exactly.
Okay.
So speaking of space, they go into, like, some really important details about the room itself. Like, they really stress the importance of thinking about noise bleed.
Noise bleed. What is noise bleed?
Yeah.
For those of us who aren't, audio engineers.
So noise bleed is basically sound escaping from your studio and, like, potentially disturbing others, especially if you're in, like, a residential area. Okay. And the author actually tells this story about, like, having to deal with the local authorities.
Because of noise complaints.
Yikes. So soundproofing is non-negotiable?
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Pretty much. And it's not just to keep the peace with your neighbors, but also to, like, ensure that you're getting clean recordings without any unwanted sounds bleeding in.
Oh, sapphic noise. Or the neighbor's dog.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It can really mess with your recordings.
Yeah.
Especially for, like, vocals or acoustic instruments.
Okay. Yeah. That makes sense. And then they also bring up security. Which is something I didn't even think about. Like, you're going to have a lot of expensive gear in your studio, so you want to make sure it's safe from theft.
They recommend, like, solid doors, good locks, maybe even a security system if you have, like, a lot of high-end equipment.
Because replacing all that would be a nightmare. So how does he actually go about building the studio? Like, where do you even start? Well, they break it down step by step. And they start with the walls. Lit. They built a dividing wall to separate the recording space from the mixing area, which is a great idea. If you have the room...
Okay, why is that important, to have those separated?
Well, for one thing, it helps with sound isolation. You don't want the sound of your computer or your mixing equipment bleeding into your recordings.
Right, so you can get, like, a clean recording in one room and then mix it in another.
Exactly. Plus, it can help with the overall vibe of your studio. Like, having separate spaces allows you to set up each area for its specific purpose, So the recording space can be more about the performance and capturing the sound, while the mixing space can be more technical and focused on, like, fine-tuning the audio.
Yeah, okay. That makes sense. So we've got the separate spaces. But what about actually soundproofing those walls?
Yeah, so they actually went all out with the soundproofing. Like, they used a combination of rock wool, sound block plasterboard, and, like, all these other materials. They even built their own door and window to make sure that they got, like, maximum sound isolation.
Wow, so they really went the DIY route.
Yeah.
But I imagine they can get pretty technical, right?
Yeah, it can be. But they, like, break it down in a way that makes it seem manageable. Like, they talk about using triple glazed units for the window.
Yeah.
And, like, sound blocking silicone to seal any gaps.
Okay, so they're not just throwing around, like, jargon.
Right.
They're actually explaining it. And all this DIY must have saved them a ton of money.
Oh, yeah, for sure. They said the whole build, including materials and labor, came in around £5,000.
Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah.
It shows that you don't have to, like, spend a fortune to create a professional sound studio.
Yeah.
But I'm curious, did they talk about, like, the aesthetic side of things at all? Because you want your studio to be a space that, like, inspires you, right?
Yeah, for sure. For sure. They actually dedicate a good chunk of the article to that. Like, they talk about the importance of lighting, and they use, like, affordable options like string lights to create, like, a warm and inviting atmosphere.
I love that idea,
Thanks.
like setting the mood. Did they mention anything about furniture?
They used IKEA furniture.
Oh, nice.
Which is a great way to, like, save money and still create a space that looks good. And they also talk about personalizing the studio with artwork and other touches that reflect your personality.
That's so cool. It's like they're saying your studio should be an extension of yourself.
Yeah.
You know?
Totally. They even share a photo of their studio and has this awesome Turkish rug in it that adds like a really unique touch.
I love that. So we talked about the space, we talked about the soundproofing, we talked about the decor. What about the gear? Like, where do you even begin?
Right. There's so much out there. Well, they actually have some really good advice. They say start small and grow your collection over time. You don't have to buy everything at once.
That's actually really reassuring because it's easy to get overwhelmed by all the like high-tech gear.
Totally.
And think you need it all right away.
And they also explain like why starting with the basics is actually beneficial, because it lets you master the fundamentals of recording and mixing before you dive into more advanced equipment.
So it's like learning an instrument. You wouldn't start with a top-of-the-line guitar if you've never held one before.
Exactly. It's about building that foundation. Plus, you know, it's easier on your budget.
Right. So what are the essential pieces of gear that they recommend for like a beginner studio?
So they highlight a few key components: a high-quality audio interface, a great microphone, a good pair of headphones, and studio monitors.
Okay. Break that down for me. What does an audio interface do?
So an audio interface, it's basically the bridge between your computer and your microphones and instruments. It lets you record and play back audio with high quality and low latency, which means like minimal delay.
Okay, got it. What about microphones? There are so many different types out there.
Yeah, there are a lot. They actually recommend a few specific models, like the Rode NT2A or the Aston Spirit. These are known for like their versatility and clarity, so they're great all-around choices.
Okay. And why are good headphones essential in a studio? Can't you just use any old pair?
Well, good headphones are important. For monitoring your recordings accurately, you need to be able to hear all the details and nuances in the sound to make sure you're getting like a clean recording. They recommend headphones like the Beyerdynamic DT770s or the Audio-Technica ATH M50Xs, which are known for their accurate sound reproduction.
Okay, so I'm guessing studio monitors are like speakers.
Yes.
But for the studio.
Yeah, basically. They're designed to give you like a neutral and accurate representation of your audio, so you can make a good mixing decisions. They recommend checking out the Yamaha HS series, which are known for their quality and affordability.
It sounds like they've covered all the bases, from like the big picture stuff, like room design and soundproofing, down to like the really small details of like specific gear. But I'm curious, did they offer any advice on how to actually use all this equipment?
Yeah, they do touch on that. They say it's important to like learn the ropes and experiment with different recording techniques and settings. They emphasize that the process of learning is just as important as having the right gear.
Right. You can have the most amazing studio in the world, but if you don't know how to use it,
it's not going to do you much good.
It's not going to help you. And it seems like this article is all about empowering you to not only build a studio, but to actually use it to create something amazing.
Yeah. For sure.
And I love how transparent they are about the whole process. They even break down the cost of their build, which is super helpful for anyone trying to budget for their own studio.
Right.
It's clear that they're passionate about making recording accessible to everyone, regardless of their budget.
Yeah, it's really inspiring to see somebody take on a project like this and actually make it happen. It makes it seem so much less daunting, you know, to build your own.
For sure. They've totally like demystified the process. And shown that it's possible, even for someone without a ton of experience or a big budget.
So if you're listening to this and you've always wanted a studio, what's like the biggest takeaway here? What should you do next? I think first off, just dive in. Like, don't be afraid to just start, you know? Start by thinking about what you want to create. Like, what kind of music or audio do you want to produce? And that'll help you figure out the kind of space and gear that you need.
And you don't have to do everything at once. Start small. Focus on like the essentials and build up from there.
Exactly.
And don't be afraid to get your hands dirty. Try some DIY.
For sure.
This article is a great resource for that. They have all those detailed steps, and they even show you how to do it like on a budget, which is super helpful.
Yeah. Here's something else to think about too. As you're, starting to build your studio, think about what makes your creative process unique, you know?
Yeah.
What things would make your studio feel like a reflection of you, of your artistic vision?
Yeah. It's not just about creating like a functional space,
Mhm.
but a space that inspires you.
Exactly. It's about creating a space that's
Check.
truly your own.
So what's one thing you learned from this deep dive that surprised you? Maybe it was like the affordability of building a studio or the importance of soundproofing. Let us know in the comments. And most importantly, keep on creating.